This is the story of a young woman named Chloe Whitman, told by me. I'm 27 years old. And what you're about to hear is based on a real story that I've carefully written and adapted, so you can feel every heartbeat, every whisper of fear, and every drop of determination that fueled her journey. It all began the night she discovered a secret her family had buried for decades, a secret so dark it tore them apart and set her on a path of revenge she never thought she could stay with me until the very end, because the twists in this story will keep you on the edge of your seat, and I promise you won't see them coming. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video so more people can experience it. This story is written and edited by Dark Life Side Diaries. Chloe Whitman had always thought of Alder Street as the safest place in the world, a cozy row of modest homes in a quiet Washington suburb where neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles and summer barbecues filled the air with the smell of smoked ribs and sweet corn. Her childhood home, a two-story, white clapboard with green shutters and a wraparound porch, stood as a fortress of comfort and memories. Or so she believed, until the night she stumbled across an old dust-covered trunk in the attic that changed everything. It was supposed to be just a routine spring cleaning, something her father had asked her to help with before he left for yet another business trip. But as she pried open that trunk, the faint creak of the hinges seemed to echo like a warning inside. Beneath stacks of yellowed photo albums and brittle letters tied with faded ribbons, she found a folder marked with her mother's name in bold black marker, Rebecca Whitman, confidential. Her mother had died when Chloe was 12, a tragic accident involving a late-night drive on a rain-slick road. At least that's what her father had always told her, but as Chloe flipped through the papers, she realized these weren't ordinary family documents. They were police reports, coroner's notes, and blurry surveillance photos that painted a far more sinister picture. Her mother's death had been classified as suspicious for over a year before the case was abruptly closed. The most chilling part was a single grainy photo showing her father, Robert Whitman, standing in the rain next to her mother's wrecked car, looking not devastated but calm, almost calculating. Chloe's hands shook as she tried to piece it together. Why would her father keep this hidden? Why had no one told her? And most of all, why did the final page of the report have a handwritten note in bold red ink that read, "Family knows more than they say"? That night, Chloe didn't sleep. Every shadow in the house felt like it was watching her, every creak of the floorboards whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear. She thought about calling her older brother, Matt, who had left home at 18 and rarely spoke to their father, but the last time they talked, Matt had warned her, if you start digging into Mom's death, you better be ready for what you find. The next morning, she confronted her father over breakfast. He was slicing into his toast when she slid the file across the table. He didn't even look at the papers, just at her. His eyes, usually warm and brown, were cold steel. "Where did you find this?" he asked quietly, almost too quietly. "In the attic," Chloe said, her voice trembling but steady enough to mask the fear coiling in her chest. "Why didn't you tell me the truth about Mom?" For a moment he just stared at her, and then he smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a father trying to comfort his daughter. It was the kind of smile that told her she had just crossed an invisible line. "Some things are better left buried, Chloe," he said, taking a sip of his coffee. "You have no idea what you're getting into. That should have been the end of it." But Chloe couldn't stop thinking about the note. Family knows more than they say. That night, she drove to Matt's apartment, other side of town. His place was small, cluttered with unpacked boxes and the faint smell of cigarette smoke. He looked older than his 30 years, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. When she showed him the folder, he didn't act surprised. Instead, he poured himself a drink and said, "I was there the night Mom died. Dad told me to keep my mouth shut or I'd regret it. I left because I couldn't live under his roof anymore." Chloe pressed him for details, but he shook his head. "It's not just about Mom, Chloe. Dad, he's not the man you think he is. He's done things, bad things, and if you're smart, you'll burn that file and walk away." But Chloe wasn't smart in the way Matt meant. She couldn't walk away. Over the next week, she began digging deeper: old news archives, court records, even gossip from neighbors who'd been around back then. That's when she discovered that just 3 months before her mother's death, a woman named Eleanor Green, a close friend of her mother's, had gone missing. Her case had also been quietly closed, and the last person seen with her was Robert Whitman. The pattern was too much to ignore, but the more Chloe uncovered, the stranger things became. She began finding small, deliberate signs that someone knew she was looking. Her car door left ajar when she was certain She'd locked at a single dead rose left on her porch. A note slipped under her door that read, "You're next." Still, fear only sharpened her resolve. She decided she needed to get into her father's locked study, a place she had never been. Aloud as a child, late one night, while he was supposedly out of town, she picked the lock with a hairpin, her heart pounding in her ears. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cigar smoke, and something metallic like blood on the desk sat a thick leather bound journal. Inside were names, dates, and cryptic notes that seemed to hint at bribes, threats, and something called the Alder Street Pact. Near the back, she found a page titled simply, "Rebecca, Final Night." Before she could read further, she heard footsteps on the porch. Her father wasn't supposed to be home until morning. In a panic, she shoved the journal under her jacket and slipped out the back door into the cold night air. She didn't stop running until she was 3 blocks away, clutching the journal like her life depended on it, because deep down she knew it did. Chloe didn't go home that night. Instead, she headed straight to Matt's apartment, pounding on his door until he grudgingly opened it, his expression shifting from annoyance to alarm when he saw the journal clutched to her chest. "What did you do?" he whispered, pulling her inside as if the walls themselves might be listening. She told him everything: the locked study, the journal, the footsteps, and watched as his face paled with every word. When she opened the journal to the page titled "Rebecca, Final Night," his hand shot out to stop her. "If you read this, Chloe, there's no going back," he warned, but she was past the point of no return. The entry was written in her father's tight, deliberate handwriting, and it wasn't just an account. It was a confession disguised as notes. It described a meeting with her mother in their car on the night she died, an argument about breaking the pact, and her refusal to keep quiet about the green incident. The last line was the most chilling. "Car stage rainstorm, perfect cover, no witnesses except the boy." Chloe's breath caught. The boy could only have been Matt. Her hands trembled as she turned to another section labeled Alder Street Pact. This part was more cryptic: a list of 4 names besides Robert Whitman's, Harold Green, Eleanor's husband, Judge Franklin Sloan, Detective Marcus Heller, and a woman simply called V. Next. To each name were dates and amounts of money, some labeled payment, others silence. Not explained. That Alder Street wasn't just a neighborhood, it was the meeting ground for a decades-old agreement between these people, a pact that bound them in secrets involving fraud, disappearances, and deaths made to look like accidents. Their mother had been about to expose them, and for that she was eliminated. "Dad's dangerous, Chloe," Matt said, his voice low but urgent, "and these people, they protect each other. If they know you have this, they'll come after you." But Chloe couldn't bring herself to hand the journal over to the police, not yet. Something in her gut told her the system was part of the problem. She decided instead to follow the names in the journal, starting with Harold Green, now an aging widower living on the edge of town. Disguised under a hoodie and sunglasses, she drove to his crumbling Victorian house, parking far enough away that no one would notice. When Harold answered the door, he looked startled to see her, though she hadn't given her name. "You're Rebecca's girl," he said quietly, as if saying it too loud might summon something. Inside, his home smelled of mothballs and stale whiskey, the walls lined with dusty portraits. He didn't deny knowing about the pact, but his voice cracked as he admitted he'd been kept in line by threats to his own family. "You think your father's the worst of them?" "He's not," Harold warned. "He's just the one who does the dirty work, the real mastermind." "That's V." When Chloe asked who V was, he shook his head. "She find you before you find her." As she left, a black sedan idled at the end of the street. She felt its eyes follow her all the way home. That night, she awoke to the smell of smoke. Someone had lit a small fire on her porch, just enough to char the welcome mat and send a clear message. She called Matt in a panic, but instead of telling her to hide, he told her something unexpected. He wanted in. "If we take them down, we do it together," he said. Over the next week, the siblings planned their approach, using the journal as both a roadmap and a weapon. They started with Judge Sloan, whose name appeared next to several suspicious case dismissals. Chloe disguised herself as a paralegal and slipped into the courthouse archives while Matt kept watch. Inside, she found files that mirrored the journal's entries, cases involving missing persons, sudden accidents, and large sums of money changing hands, all signed off by Sloan. One file in particular caught her eye. It was about Eleanor Green's disappearance, but the official report had been rewritten to claim she'd relocated voluntarily. Chloe photographed everything and stashed the files in her bag. That night, she emailed copies to a journalist friend she trusted using an anonymous account. But before she could even breathe, her phone buzzed with a blocked number. "Stop or Matt dies." She froze. When she Called Matt, he didn't pick up. Panic gripped her chest as she sped to his apartment only to find the door ajar and the place ransacked. A single page from the journal lay on the kitchen counter with one word scrawled across it. Mine. In. That moment she knew two things: they had Matt and they wanted the journal back. She also knew that giving it up wouldn't save him. These people didn't leave loose ends. With shaking hands, she called the only person she thought might help: Harold. Green to her surprise, he answered on the first ring. His voice was tight with fear, but he agreed to meet her at an old diner on the outskirts of town. When she arrived, he slid into the booth with a manila envelope and a haunted look in his eyes. I don't have much time, he said. Inside the envelope were photos, grainy but clear enough to see Matt tied to a chair in a dimly lit room. V has him, Harold said. She's not going to kill him yet. She wants to use him to get you to. The meeting. When Chloe asked what meeting, Harold's lips pressed into a thin line. The Pact's anniversary tomorrow night. They meet every year too. Renew things. If you want your brother back, you'll have to walk into their den. It was insane, suicidal even, but Chloe didn't see another choice. She spent the next day preparing, a hidden recorder in her jacket, pepper spray in her pocket, and the journal in a waterproof bag duct taped to her back. As night fell, she followed Harold's directions to an abandoned estate deep in the woods, its windows dark except for one flickering light. She parked half a mile away and approached on foot, her heart thudding with each step. Inside, the scene was almost surreal. 5 people. Seated around a long mahogany table, glasses of wine in hand, as if they were hosting a dinner party. Her father sat at the head with Judge Sloan to his right, Detective Heller to his left, Harold at the far end, and a woman she'd never seen before. Tall, elegant, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce straight through her. Chloe knew instantly. This was V. Matt was there too, tied to a chair in the corner, a strip of duct tape over his mouth. Ah, the prodigal daughter, her father said, rising from his seat. I was wondering how long it would take you to find us. Chloe's voice didn't shake as she said, let him go. V laughed, a low, cold sound. We will when you hand over what you stole. Chloe played dumb, but they weren't buying it. Her father stepped closer, his smile as cold as the night air. This isn't a game, Chloe. That journal is the only thing tying us together. Without it, we're untouchable. With it, we all burn. Her mind raced. She needed a way to get Matt out and record enough to take them all down. That's when Harold did something she didn't expect. He stood up, his hands shaking. It's over, he said, looking straight at V. I'm done. The room went silent. V's eyes narrowed, and in that pause, Chloe acted. She pulled the recorder from her jacket and slammed it onto the table, its red light blinking. This is live, she bluffed. The police are already on their way. Whether they believed her or not, the sudden chaos was all she needed. Harold lunged at Sloan, knocking over a chair while Chloe dashed to Matt, cutting him loose with the small knife she'd hidden in her boot. They ran for the door as shouts and crashes erupted behind them, but just as they reached the porch, a gunshot cracked the night and Matt stumbled, blood blossoming across his shoulder. The gunshot rang in Chloe's ears like a fire alarm, each beat of her heart sinking with the pounding of her footsteps as she half dragged, half carried Matt down the porch, steps into the darkness of the surrounding woods. He was still conscious, gritting his teeth against the pain, but the warm stickiness of his blood soaking into her sleeve told her they didn't have much time. Behind them, shouts tore through the night, her father's voice ordering them to be found. V's sharper tone cutting through with a terrifying calm, promising no one leaves here alive. Chloe pushed forward, the cold night air burning her lungs, every snapping twig underfoot a betrayal of their location. The estate loomed behind them like a predator, its one lit window now joined by a second glow. A moving flashlight beam searching the trees. She kept her eyes on a faint break in the tree line ahead, praying it led to the road, but when they finally burst out into the clearing, her heart sank. It wasn't a road, but an overgrown path leading to a rusted chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. She looked back. 2 dark figures were closing in fast there, shapes shifting in and out of the shadows. Climb, she hissed to Matt, boosting him up despite his injury. His foot slipped, sending a fresh spurt of blood down his arm, but he gritted his teeth and hauled himself over. Chloe followed, ignoring the sting as the barbed wire tore through her jacket and grazed her skin. They landed hard on the other side and stumbled forward into a narrow gravel lane where by some miracle the faint glimmer of headlights appeared in the distance, waving frantically. Chloe stepped into the lane, forcing the approaching truck to screech to a halt. The driver, a grizzled man in a baseball cap, looked from her to Matt and back again. Jesus, what happened to him? Without thinking twice, Chloe yanked open the passenger door and said, we need a hospital now. The man didn't ask more questions, just sped down the lane, tires spitting gravel. At the hospital, Matt was rushed into surgery while Chloe sat in the waiting room, her blood-stained hands gripping the journal hidden inside her bag. Every creak of the door made her flinch, certain she'd see her father or one of the Pact members walk in. Instead, after what felt like hours, a nurse emerged to tell her Matt was stable but would need rest and police protection. Chloe knew she couldn't trust the local police. Detective Heller's name in the journal made that clear. That's when she decided to take a risk she'd been avoiding, calling her journalist friend Sam Delaney. Sam was one of the few people she knew who had no ties to Alder Street, a stubborn investigative reporter who'd lost his job after exposing a corrupt developer linked to a state senator. When Chloe met him in a dimly lit diner across town, she slid the journal across the table and watched his eyes widen as he flipped through its contents. This is explosive, he said, but if half of it's true, you're dealing with people who will do anything to bury it. Chloe told him about the meeting and the gunshot. Sam leaned in, lowering his voice. If we're going to bring them down, we need undeniable proof, and we need it fast. That means video witnesses, financial trails, something no judge, not even Sloan, can make disappear. They decided to split the work. Sam would start tracking bank accounts and shell companies tied to the names in the journal, while Chloe would try to get Harold Green to turn on the rest of them officially. But finding Harold wasn't easy. His house was empty. The door hanging open, a single lamp flickering inside. On the kitchen counter was a Polaroid of Harold bound to a chair, a smear of blood on his cheek, and a note. Loose lips sink ships. Chloe's stomach twisted. She'd been one step too slow. Driving back toward the hospital, she noticed a black SUV in her rearview mirror following at a steady distance. She turned left then right, taking random streets, but the SUV matched every move. Her hands tightened on the wheel as she spotted an upcoming gas station. She swerved in parking near the entrance and dashed inside. From the corner of her eye, she saw two men get out of the SUV, both dressed in dark jackets, scanning the area. Pretending to browse the snack aisle, Chloe waited until they stepped inside, then slipped out the side door and into a waiting taxi. Downtown fast, she told the driver, ducking low in the seat. Once she was sure she'd shaken them, she called Sam. He picked up on the second ring, his voice tense. I found something, a series of offshore accounts tied to a company called Alder Holdings. It's a friend, Chloe. The money trails back to all of them, your dad, Sloan, Heller, even someone in the governor's office, and guess who's listed as CEO? Chloe didn't need to guess. V, she said, her stomach sinking. Sam's next words chilled her. And there's a transfer scheduled for tomorrow. $2 million. If we can intercept proof of that, it's game over. The plan was simple but dangerous. Chloe would break into Alder Holdings' downtown office while Sam acted as lookout. The building, a sleek glass tower, seemed impossible to breach until Chloe noticed a maintenance crew entering through a side door wearing a stolen uniform from an unlocked supply van. She blended in and made her way to the top floor. There, in an opulent corner office, she found the computer terminal still logged in a folder labeled Transfers open on the desktop. Her pulse raced as she copied everything to a flash drive. Dates, amounts, account numbers, but just as she was finishing, the door creaked open. She turned to see V herself standing in the doorway, her eyes cold and calculating. You're bolder than I thought, V said, stepping inside and closing the door. But you're also predictable. Chloe's mind screamed for her to run, but her feet stayed planted. You took my mother from me, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. V tilted her head, a faint smirk curling her lips. Your mother was a liability just like you are now. In a flash, Chloe yanked the pepper spray from her pocket and aimed for V's eyes. The woman screamed, clawing at her face, and Chloe bolted past her, sprinting down the hallway to the emergency stairs. She didn't stop until she reached the street where Sam's car was waiting with the engine running. Drive, she shouted, diving, and they sped away, tires squealing as V's shadow appeared in the office window above, watching them go. Back at Sam's apartment, they backed up the flash drive to multiple locations, knowing the data was now their most valuable weapon and their biggest target. Chloe knew they had evidence, but evidence alone wouldn't be enough. They needed to dismantle the pact from the inside, and the only way to do that was to make the members turn on each other. And as she sat there, her mind already turning over possibilities, she realized the first crack in their armor had already appeared: Harold's defiance. At the meeting, if she could use that, if she could plant seeds of doubt and fear among them, they might destroy each other before they destroyed her. But time was running out, and every hour Matt lay in that hospital bed was another hour her father And V could strike again. Chloe knew she had to move fast. Every hour that passed gave her father and V a chance to close and erase the evidence, or worse, finish what they'd started with Matt. She spent the next day calling in favors from people she hadn't spoken to in years, an old high school friend now working as a data analyst, a former neighbor who'd once been a court stenographer, even a bartender who'd overheard too many drunken confessions from city officials. Piece by piece, she fed them carefully chosen fragments of the truth, making sure word of the $2 million transfer and the journal reached ears that would send whispers racing through Alder Street's tight web of corruption. Sam worked alongside her, planting the financial evidence and anonymous leaks to online watchdog groups, knowing that if the members of the pact saw their own names surfacing in connection to offshore accounts, paranoia would start to erode their unity. That night, Chloe's gamble paid off. Harold, somehow still alive, called her from an untraceable number. His voice was ragged, like he'd been running. "They think one of them is talking," he said. "V is furious. Your father doesn't trust Sloan, and Heller is accusing everyone of betrayal. You've got maybe 24 hours before they make a move to shut this all down for good." Chloe realized she could push them over the edge by feeding each member a different lie about the others, each one designed to make them think betrayal was imminent. She crafted anonymous messages, each one containing a doctored snippet from the journal or the financial data hinting that another member was about to flip. Sam sent them through encrypted apps, bouncing the signals around the world. By morning, chaos had erupted. Sloane's car was found abandoned on the side of a highway, its windows shattered. Heller's house had been ransacked in what looked like a targeted hit, and V's penthouse was suddenly surrounded by unmarked vans, either federal agents tipped off by the leaks or hired guns from her own side, cleaning up loose ends. Chloe didn't know which, and she didn't care. All she wanted was Matt safe. But when she got to the hospital, his bed was empty, the sheets still warm. Her stomach plummeted until a nurse handed her a folded note that simply read, "If you want him back, Alder Street, midnight." It was the same address as the house she'd grown up in, her father's home. The trap was obvious, but she had no choice. As the clock neared midnight, Chloe walked up the familiar path to the porch, the journal clutched under her arm, a small recording device hidden in her jacket, and Sam shadowing her from a distance. Inside, the living room was dimly lit, the air heavy with the smell of cigar smoke. Matt sat in a chair near the fireplace, hands bound but otherwise unharmed, his eyes locking onto hers with a silent plea. Her father stood by the mantel, a glass of whiskey in his hand, while V lounged on the couch like a queen overseeing her court. "I have to admit," V said, her voice smooth, "you've been a bigger problem than I anticipated, but every problem has a solution." Chloe held up the journal. "This ends tonight. You let Matt go and I walk away." Her father chuckled, the sound low and dangerous. "You're not walking away from this, Chloe. You're either with us or you're gone." Before she could respond, there was a crash outside. Sam, making his move, the distraction was enough. Chloe tossed the journal into the fireplace, the dry pages igniting instantly. V shrieked and lunged forward, but in the chaos, Chloe rushed to Matt, cutting his bonds. As they scrambled toward the door, her father grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "You think this ends us?" he snarled. "We don't need the journal to survive." Chloe twisted free, her voice steady. "No, but the world doesn't need you to survive either." With that, she triggered the recording device in her jacket, which had been live since she walked in, broadcasting their conversation directly to Sam's laptop, where it was being streamed to multiple journalists and uploaded to cloud storage. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The federal agents Sam had tipped off earlier were closing, and V bolted for the back door, her heels clicking like gunshots against the hardwood, while her father tried to shove Chloe aside and make his own escape. But before he could reach the door, the front windows exploded inward, armed agents flooding the room, shouting commands. Chloe shielded Matt as her father was shoved to the ground, his hands zip-tied behind his back. V dragged him moments later, spitting curses. The whole scene felt surreal, years of secrets, lies, and fear collapsing in a single chaotic instant. Hours later, as dawn broke over Alder Street, Chloe sat on the porch steps of her childhood home, watching agents carry out boxes of evidence. Matt, his arm in a sling, sat beside her. "You did it," he said softly, but Chloe shook her head. "We did it." In the days that followed, the story exploded across national news. The Alder Street Pact becoming a household phrase synonymous with corruption and betrayal. Judge Sloan was arrested. In another state, Heller was charged with obstruction and conspiracy. Harold testified under immunity, and both Robert Whitman and V faced a laundry list of charges that would keep them behind bars for the rest of their lives. Sam's name was on every major headline, but he made sure Chloe's role stayed in the shadows where she wanted it. She knew exposing them had cost her the last pieces of her family, but she also knew she'd saved lives by ending theirs. On the night she and Matt finally left Alder Street for good, she took one last look at the house, not with sadness, but with a grim sort of relief. The ghost of that place could stay buried. She had no more need for revenge. She had her brother, her freedom, and the knowledge that some evils once dragged into the light could never crawl back into the dark. Thanks for watching to Chloe's story if you made it this far. I hope you'll subscribe, like, and share so more people can hear stories like this. This has been Dark Life Side Diaries, and I'll see you in the next one.